Hello, this is Zapper Minx, otherwise known as Brian to my clients already know me. This is just my computer. I'm bringing you Computer Anatomy 101. As you can see, this is my desktop. It's on my workbench, not a very good workbench, but workbench nonetheless. You got the DVD-ROM in there, missing a panel. I should put that back. Had something else to begin with. But what we want to see is the inside. And don't mind my makeshift torch. The light in here is not very good. But in here we have the power supply. Power supply is the thing that runs everything, obviously. It supplies the power. The wattage of the power supply is fairly important depending on what you have in your computer. If I was to put anything else in my computer, I would need a bigger power supply if I want to run everything safely. So that's the power supply. You got main component, power supply. Main component is a hard drive. Now here I have 4 hard drives. That's 1, 2, 3, and a solid state hidden away in there. Now solid state I'm using as the main drive. Don't know if you can even see in there. There you go. Solid state is the main drive. That's the one that has Windows on it. It runs a lot faster, boots into Windows faster. Just generally does everything faster. My other drives are just data, games, and other stuff. Got over 3 terabytes of space in there all up with those hard drives. Now, as you can see here, there's a whole heap of circuit boards. For people who don't know what we're looking at, this one here is the main board. As you can see, it's fairly large. It goes from right at the top to almost all the way down to the bottom. That brings everything together. That does, I don't know, best way to explain it, but that governs a whole lot of the system. It makes it so what CPU you can have in there, how fast it runs, same with the RAM, how many video cards you can have in there. At the moment I've got 1, I can have 2 on this main board. Some of them you can have up to 4, 3 or 4. It also governs how many hard drives you can put in without an expansion card. In this motherboard I can have 5. The DVD-ROM counts as a hard drive. But the main board has the CPU, the RAM, video, pretty much everything plugged into a hard drive power supply. Everything comes together with the main board, hence the name Mainboard. Now, video card is here. That's the video card. Not all computers need a card like that. Some of them have them built onto the motherboard or even into the CPU. But this governs the graphics, so if you want to play games, you need a decent video card. Mine is an Asus 7970. It's fairly beefy. No, it's not huge, but it's fairly beefy. They also have a little wireless card in here. Not that it's working anymore, it's decided to stop working. I might remove that later. But that allows me to connect to the network wirelessly. You got the RAM here, as you can see. If I move this, maybe. I've got 2 RAM sticks in there already, the 2 blue ones, and 2 black slots next to empty slots so I can put more RAM in. So far that's only 8 gig of RAM. This motherboard can support up to 32, I believe. That is 1866 RAM. This motherboard can support faster, but that you have to overclock. I don't like overclocking. I like my computer to last as long as possible. This machine, most parts in here are already over 2 years old. Now, my CPU is right next to that. It's under this block here. You can stay out of the light. That's my CPU. Now the CPU that basically does all the calculations for everything pretty much. All your programs that run on your computer, that then governs the speed and how fast it can calculate those programs. So if you're using Photoshop or you're using the internet, Facebook, basically governs everything. Everything passes through there to some degree. Also forgot to say that the RAM speeds, like I said, mine's 1866. The faster the RAM, the faster you can put stuff in and dump it out. Now the idea of RAM is to load stuff from the hard drive into the RAM because the RAM is faster. Say for instance if you're loading up Internet Explorer to go on Facebook, it'll load Internet Explorer off the hard drive into the RAM, and then it'll use it through the RAM. The reason why it does that is, like I said, because the hard drive is slow compared to the RAM, although solid state it's getting up there in comparison, but still the RAM is still faster. Because if you were opening Facebook, you're getting those pictures up and you're scrolling down, more pictures are loading, more status updates are loading. It goes for any website or anything you do on the computer, but I'm using it as an example. It will want to save that into memory, so either it will save it into there or it'll save it to the hard drive. If it saves it to the hard drive, you'd have one slow computer, so it dumps it into the RAM. And if you save something, if you physically want to save something, it'll save it to the hard drive for you. It's a lot faster that way. It's kind of, the best way to put it is it's a buffer more than anything between everything else and the hard drive. But yeah, that's the whole idea of that. Now, I have a water cooling unit on my CPU, but most of the time you have a heatsink on your computer. Now, I have an old Mainboard here that doesn't work anymore. It's an old Intel. But as you can see, that's the CPU right there. But luckily it doesn't work anymore. But yeah, that's the CPU right there underneath that block. Now, this is an old Pentium 4, nothing too flash, but that's a generic heat dissipation device. Basically gets rid of the heat from your CPU so it doesn't overheat and basically cook itself and you have no computer. They come in all sorts of different sizes. My computer is actually a AMD, this is Intel. The heat sinks tend to look a bit different, but they all do the same thing in the end. What's under those heat sinks is something like this. This is an old Pentium 4 CPU, but they all look pretty much the same. Different varying sizes, colours. And you've got pins on this one. Most Intel these days don't have pins. Pins are easy to bend. I would show you, but this one actually still works, and you never know, someone might actually want this CPU. So I'm not really willing to wreck it. But it's pretty outdated. So I mean, I doubt anyone will, but just in case. But most new Intels don't have the pins on the bottom. As far as I'm aware, most AMDs do, if not all, have the pins on the bottom. It's just a different way of attaching the CPU to the mainboard. Now, like I said before, mainboard does all sorts of things. Just disconnect these. So, turn the computer around. On the back of the computer you've got all your external ports on there. That's the back of the mainboard itself, up the top there. So you've got pretty much everything on there. Got the old PS2 mouse and old PS2 keyboard. This motherboard supports both. You've got the audio. That's optical audio network. That's for basically LAN. Lets you connect in using Cat5 Ethernet cords, or you can use better. But you get USB 2.0. Got 4 of them on this one. USB 2.0 eSATA. It's for connecting in hard drives externally. It runs a bit faster. USB 3. It's I'd say it's fairly new, but that runs faster than USB 2, and you can have more devices hanging off it, and they put out more power. Then you've got all the sounds, the surround sound as well. Wireless card, the antenna, but it doesn't work. There's my video card. You've got DVI, HDMI, and mini display port. They can go out to any number: HDMI, DVI, VGA. Down here, there's a few more USB ports. I might have said that twice. My camera's got a limitation. I didn't even realise. But back at the power supply, so you plug the power in. It's got an external in-out switch, on-off, in-out. It's off. It's on. Some power supplies will have another switch on them, which turns it from 110 volts, I believe, to 240 volts. It was 110, which is the American voltage to ours. You really want to make sure that's on 240 volts. You'll most likely blow up the power supply if you switch it to the lower voltage, and you don't really want that because that could fry your whole computer. Most of the time, 9 times out of 10 though, it just fries the power supply and you just replace the power supply and you're on your way again. But yeah, this is my computer. Plenty of cooling fans in there. It's heavy too, in case you didn't notice by me grunting. But you've got plenty of fans. There's one hiding in there next to the hard drives. Basically, you can see 2 up there on my water cooler, and there's actually 2 above it. Barely see them. And you got 1 at the back there. So what's that? It's 2, 4, 6 fans. 2, 4, yeah, 6. There's 6 fans in there. Now, I don't really need that many fans. I have them all set to low, so the computer's really quiet and it pushes out a lot of air. But you could have a couple of fans in there set to high, and it will push out the same amount of air mine are, but that would be a hell of a lot louder. Oh no, yeah, sorry, I've got 8 fans, I forget the 2 on the side. That makes everything run cooler. Basically, when it comes to computers and electronics, the cooler something runs, the longer it will last. That's why I'm not a huge fan of overclocking. It makes them run hotter. And like I said, I like my stuff to last, to get more bang for your buck, so to speak. Now, probably a lot of people are out there wondering what is the difference between Intel and AMD. Well, you can't put an Intel chip onto an AMD motherboard and vice versa. That is pretty basic knowledge, but depends on what you want. There's probably a lot of fanboys and fangirls out there that go only AMD or only Intel. Me, I like them both, but I go for AMD because they're quality. They are quality, but they're a bit cheaper than Intel, but they are a little bit slower in most cases. Intel is got a bit more speed on top of it, but if you go on speed versus dollars, AMD will come out in front for speed versus dollars. But if you really wanted to build a really powerful computer, you know, pretty good gaming rig, you'd go Intel. If you wanted to spend that kind of money, that'd probably get quite expensive for an i7. I think the newest i7 goes for $1,000. That's the last time I looked, or maybe more. The newest AMD 5 gigahertz I think goes for $600, but that's American, so it's probably a bit more in Australia because we get ripped off. But yeah, that's the basic anatomy of a computer. And of course, I think that's not much. I might have overdone it, I might have underdone it. So if you guys have any further questions, you want me to elaborate on anything at all, you just put in the comments and let me know. Yeah, I can go further into things, such as hard drive interface, SATA, IDE, a few other ones that aren't really to the commercial public, that don't really use, but different video cards, different brands, power supplies with the different wattage, why you have to have certain wattage, and stuff like that. But different coolers, different DVD-ROMs, Blu-rays, different hard drives, there's all sorts of stuff, but this is the basics. So if you want any more information, just leave a comment like I said and I'll get onto it. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed my video and my really dodgy camera working. Dodgy light. Yeah, I need to get my torch back. Anywho, you have a good day, and I hope this helps anyone out who didn't really know anything. Thank you and goodbye.